I want to start by quickly addressing the suggestion that anyone who isn't happy with the service provided by a private company like YouTube could just leave and go to a competing service or not partake in this form of media. Unfortunately, in the information-driven democracies that we live in, what happens on YouTube affects all of us. And further, it's not possible for a competing service to offer anything like the public reach and the potential monetization that YouTube, by which I mean parent company Google, is able to provide its users. So let's listen to what Susan Wojcicki has to say about her company's role in the current crisis.
But then we also talk about removing information that is problematic. Of course, anything that is medically unsubstantiated. So people saying like, take vitamin C, take turmeric, like those all will cure you. Those are the examples of things that would be a violation of our policy. Anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy. And so remove is another really important part of our policy.
So you're not just putting the truth next to the lie, you're taking the lie down. That's a pretty aggressive approach.
Well, we do remove, across YouTube in non-pandemic times, information that is a violation of our policy.
Susan responded to the suggestion that her removal policies are aggressive by referring to how normal it actually is for YouTube to remove content. The example that she chose is quite a vague statement that vitamin C or turmeric will cure you. So I went looking in YouTube's policies for the general case that example fits into. Within the coronavirus specific policies, there's a frequently asked question about fighting misinformation, with these completely reasonable examples. And this also seems in line with what's in the general policies. YouTube has always prohibited users from promoting harmful remedies or cures. Now, I don't think anyone really believes that taking vitamin C or turmeric is harmful, even if you think it's useless. The potential might exist to discourage someone from seeking medical care by promoting vitamins instead. However, I'm thinking there's not much to be gained from taking Susan's vitamin C and turmeric examples too literally here. So I'm going to turn to this more general statement that she made instead.
Anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy. And so remove is another really important part.
I realized that I had no idea what WHO advice is on the proper role of vitamins or nutrition in general in the current pandemic. So here I am checking out the advice for the public section of their website. I got no hits for vitamins, nutrition, or diet. I really didn't expect to find anything for turmeric. No hits for immunity, or immune system. This text is exclusively advocating the external line of defense. I read through these printable infographics, and this one here got my hopes up for a quick second. And finally, here under home care, I found the official recommendation that an ill person ought to eat nutritious food. And I think we can all agree on that one. And it's also great to recommend that caregivers of ill people feed them nutritious food. I would have liked to read the same advice under the recommendations for the whole household, because I can see the value in eating nutritious food before you're ill. But moving along, here's some advice for coping with stress. And I'm pleased that it includes eating a proper diet, which looks like it involves broccoli. But the companion graphic for helping children cope with stress lists a whole lot of things that aren't providing the children with a proper diet. This seems like quite a major oversight. Now, I don't think it's obvious that something like a child's stress during a global crisis is actually the World Health Organization's responsibility. However, I do think that when such an ultimate authority chooses to publish information, it is reasonable for us to demand that that information be high quality. In regards to the YouTube policy of not going against the recommendations of the World Health Organization, I think this one could go either way. In pointing out that good nutrition is valuable for healthy people as well as ill people, and for stressed children as well as stressed adults, I'm stating that the WHO has made omissions in their advice. That might be a contradiction of detail, but presumably not of spirit, since the obvious assumption is that the WHO did intend to give comprehensive advice to help us be healthy. but they overlooked a few things in the context of this crisis. I was starting to find the WHO's advice to be a much more interesting topic than YouTube's censorship policies. And I'm motivated here by the observation that a lot of first world citizens spend most of their lives being very unhealthy. And further, this particular pandemic overwhelmingly kills people who are already sick. So I decided to have a look at what they mean by those general statements, nutritious food and proper diet. I gather that different specialists still struggle to agree on what those terms mean, and I know there have been major revisions to the old food pyramid since we were taught it at school. And I think I'm not alone in finding the whole topic to be often overwhelming in its complexity and contradictions. So I was keen to see what information is coming down from the top. I was looking for publications targeted towards the types of poor nutrition that are common in rich countries, where people could theoretically choose otherwise. But along the way I learned about the growing prevalence of obesity in the developing world. Turns out that the food pyramid was never a WHO publication, but I did find this colourful poster. 5 Keys to a Healthy Diet. I don't think I'm qualified to comment on number 1, so I'll move right along. Eat a variety of foods. Sounds great. However, I found this use of the term staple foods very surprising. The examples given for staples are cereals and starchy root vegetables. I've never heard the term staple used as a synonym for carbohydrate in this way, so I checked Wikipedia to make sure I understood the term correctly. And indeed, the definition depends only on the volume and frequency with which the food is consumed. But staples around the world include fruit, vegetables, animal products, as well as these cheap carbohydrates. The structure of this paragraph emphasizes carbohydrate by defining it as staple food, and then by filling half of the physical space of the text with this list of 9 examples. This wouldn't have been surprising 20 years ago, when we were encouraged to fill half our plates with carbohydrates anyway. But old food pyramids around the world were revised in recent decades to reduce the emphasis on carbohydrates in favor of fruit and veggies, and to stress the critical distinction between refined and whole grains. That difference is mentioned here in the second paragraph, but I don't find this advice at all clear, because our most common wheat products like bread and pasta are processed anyway, even if they are using whole wheat. This specific claim that such a varied diet as described will help one to reduce sugar is highly dependent on the type and quality of the carbohydrate staples, because refined carbohydrates such as in white bread quickly metabolizes into sugar anyway, causing a rapid blood sugar spike that in some people fuels a cycle of sugar addiction, especially in children. Number 3, eat plenty of vegetables and fruit. My only issue with this one is that it comes in at number 3. Number 4. I think this heading is completely reasonable, but the text refers exclusively to reducing the amount of fat in one's diet. This advice only makes sense to someone who is currently consuming too much energy and too much unhealthy fat. I want to be really careful to avoid taking sides on any of the contentious issues of nutrition, and the question of the proper balance of energy from fats and energy from carbohydrates is something that we're still receiving mixed messages on. However, if I compare the attention given here to distinguishing between healthy and unhealthy fats, with this vague statement that might be about distinguishing between healthy and unhealthy carbs, I see an inconsistency regardless of what side of the fats versus carbs argument anyone is taking. Number 5 equates salt and sugar, and I find this the most inexcusable piece of advice so far. Salt, in low to moderate amounts, is vital for life and not just healthy function, although like all substances is toxic in excessive quantities. There's no mention of this critical minimum requirement anywhere in this text. Sugar has no such equivalent minimum and has value only as a quick source of energy and addictive neurochemicals. I think it's fair to summarize this entire document as being targeted at people with a short attention span and a very unhealthy diet. And if this is the quality of advice provided by our highest relevant authority, then it's reasonable to expect an increasing portion of people in future to have short attention spans and unhealthy diets. I kept looking around the WHO's nutrition section for something more flattering, and I found that their goal on childhood obesity for 2025 is that it does not increase during the decade that we're in the middle of. I briefly wondered whether that refers to a proportional increase or an absolute increase, but both options are actually so bad that I wasn't motivated enough to find the answer to that question, especially considering this surprising statistic, that only 1/3 of the obese children in the world live in rich countries. Returning to the question of YouTube's policy of not contradicting the World Health Organization, as I mentioned earlier in this video, I think this could go either way. I accept that I am contradicting the WHO in this YouTube video, so I think the question is whether it's just a matter of detail or if it's a matter of spirit. If this is all just a series of omissions, but we all do want the world to be healthy, then pointing out omissions is not a contradiction of spirit. But personally, I'm in a position here where I'm struggling to believe that any world organization could be doing their job this badly by accident. We have a cultural idea here in the West that good health is something to be purchased. Often this takes the form of observations that healthcare generally costs more than any normal person can afford, and so demands are made that either private companies or governments purchase more of this health for us or for a disadvantaged group. I don't think humans always thought about health in this way, and I don't know how the idea became so prevalent. But my observation here is that good nutrition, which is an obvious foundation of good health, is being de-emphasized by the World Health Organization, and that's both in their coronavirus advice and in their general recommendations. Now, if that was just an accident, then surely all that's required is for enough people to point out the accident on whatever platforms will allow us to, and then we can expect revised publications in the near future. Until that happens, the WHO will still be called an authoritative source, but they don't deserve to be called a reliable source of information on the world's health.